So I'll get into my next presentation, and a couple of the questions that I saw I think will be answered in this presentation. 3 weeks ago, the front page of one of the main newspapers in Australia was all black, and up the top it had serial killer, and then down the bottom it said 51 victims a day, and then you turn the page, heart disease. It's the #1 killer in Australia. I think it's the #1 killer in America. Is that right? And Newton's third law of motion states that to every action there is an equal and an opposite reaction. There is a reason. And what are we told is the cause of heart disease? Cholesterol. Is that right? Well, I've got some shocking news for you. There is no proof that cholesterol and saturated fat cause heart disease. There was no heart disease in the South Pacific Islands when they were having their coconut 3 times a day. So what I want to show you is what cholesterol is. So your liver makes cholesterol, and 80% of the cholesterol that your liver makes is made from glucose, and 20% of the cholesterol that your liver makes is made from fat. So I have to tell you, it's not the butter on the bread, it's the bread under the butter. Dr. Atkins, back in the 80s, when he put his patients on the low carbohydrate diet, he was shocked to find that among many other things, his patients with high cholesterol levels were coming back to normal. And what were they eating? Meat, butter, cheese, cream, eggs. And what are we told if we want to get our cholesterol levels down? What have we got to stop? Eggs. Meat, butter, cream, cheese, eggs. Now Atkins scratched his head because he only did this for weight loss. So he went into the medical journals and he found that in the 1980s there was research that shows that dietary cholesterol has little or no effect on your blood cholesterol levels. He also found that a high carbohydrate diet stimulated too much insulin, which stimulated the liver to make more cholesterol. So let's have a look at what cholesterol is. You've got high density lipoprotein, your HDL. It's called the good guy because high density lipoprotein is the carrier. It carries excess cholesterol back to the liver. Remember, your liver makes cholesterol. And it makes cholesterol according to the body's demands. The other cholesterol is low density lipoprotein. And it's called the bad guy. Is that right? But you know, the body doesn't make anything bad. LDL is the repairer and the rebuilder. So that's where you'll find it, wherever there's a need for repairing and rebuilding. But LDL does something else. It delivers cholesterol to the brain, and your brain, my brain, everyone's brain loves cholesterol. The food that is the highest in cholesterol and highest in saturated fat is breast milk in the first month of life. Are they going to ban breast milk? In fact, we had a midwife, and she said that she was working in an undeveloped country, and they found a lot of the babies were getting stunted brain growth. They weren't developing properly. And then they discovered that the mothers were watering down the powdered milk to make it last longer. So these babies weren't getting fat. They weren't getting sufficient fat. The reason why breast milk is so high in saturated fat and cholesterol in that first month is because that developing brain cannot develop without it. Our brain needs fat. And I think we're all suffering from fat phobia, are we? We've all been brainwashed into thinking fat is bad. The membrane around every cell in the body is 50% protein, and the membrane around every cell in the body is 50% fat. Whether you are 100 pound, 200 pound or 300 pound. It's the membrane, except for the brain cell. The brain cell's membrane is 70% fat. It's the fattiest organ in the body and it loves fat. You've heard of the ketogenic diet. The ketogenic diet is a diet that can be used to conquer epilepsy. In fact, it was first discovered in about the 1920s. A group of doctors in the John Huntley Hospital were fasting their epileptic patients because when you fast, your body lives on your fat stores. And what happens is the liver converts that fat to ketones. And your brain loves ketones. You see, fat, it burns at 9 calories per gram. Whereas glucose, it burns at 4 calories per gram. Now, every weight loss diet has this in psychedelic colours, but they don't understand what a calorie is. A calorie is a unit of energy. If you want a high energy food, what do you eat? Fat. Every smoothie should have a nice helping of coconut cream, and it certainly makes it taste nice. Can you see why the brain loves fat? Because it's going to give more than twice the units of energy, and our brain cells consume 15 times the glucose of any other cell. No wonder breast milk is incredibly high in fat. I was at my son and daughter-in-law's place with their new baby, 2 weeks old. The mother expressed some milk so she could have a rest, and then I minded the baby. Oh, you should have seen that milk. It was dark yellow. The baby's only 2 weeks old. That developing brain cannot develop without fat. In Australia, 1,700 cases of Alzheimer's is being diagnosed every week in this fat-free nation. The Framingham Heart Study, you've heard of it? Little town of Framingham in America. I love this study, not funded by the pharmaceutical companies, not funded by the dairy industry, the grain industry, the sugar industry, independent little study. Been going for 30 years. They set it up to prove that cholesterol and saturated fat cause heart disease, and it's not. People with low cholesterol levels are having heart attacks. But you know what it did show? People with high cholesterol levels don't get Alzheimer's. Do you need a moment's silence to digest that one? Because what does the brain love? Fat. And fat doesn't make you fat, does it? We learned that. Now, there are fats that heal and there are fats that harm. And the harmful fats are the altered fats. How do you alter fats? By heating them. There's only one fat that can handle heat, and that's the saturated fats, the coconut, because it has no empty spots on it. So let's go back to looking at our cholesterol. For the ones up the back, I'll do it right up high for you. So this is an artery. And because of its low density, LDL is always on the edge. There's LDL there. And because of its high density, HDL is in the middle. I recently got a book, and it's called by Natasha Campbell McBride. You may have heard it. She was made famous with her book Gut and Psychology, called The GAP Diet. Well, she's written another book called Put Your Heart in Your Mouth on heart disease. She spends her first 3 chapters looking at what causes a deterioration of the cells that line the artery, the endothelium cells. So what does cause a deterioration of the endothelium cells? Chemicals. And we are washed with chemicals, aren't we? Now, you have no say over outside your fence, but you have total say over what's in your laundry cupboard. All my grandchildren will find in my laundry cupboard is white vinegar and sodium bicarbonate. That's all they cleaned with in the old days. And your microfiber cloths. Many people are poisoning themselves with what they're cleaning with. Start to investigate what's in your shampoo, what's in your conditioner, what's in your laundry detergent. Now, praise God for Trader Joe's and Whole Foods, is it, and Sprouts, because you can get biodegradable detergents, things like that. Be careful what's in your food. Go organic as much as possible. Be careful what's in your clothes. There are 3 chemical fibres, fabrics: polyester, acrylic and nylon. Polyester, acrylic and nylon basically are made out of chemicals. And ladies, have a close look at what your bras are made out of. Your nighties, your underwear, they're touching your skin. What you exercise in. Because when your skin gets hot and your pores open, they will absorb those chemicals. Those chemicals come in and damage the endothelial walls in the arteries. Chemicals, they come from many areas. Mold. Be particularly careful to look in your house. There should be no mold in your house. No mold. Cut the trees down, get them away from your house. Let the sunshine in. What does sunshine do to mold? Kills it. Open the windows, get the fresh air in. I like being warm at night, but I also like fresh air. I have a hot shower and quickly jump into bed before I get cold because I've got my window open. We should be having pure fresh air. Be very careful on your air quality. Mold is toxic. It can eat away at the endothelium cells. Mercury. I don't know how they ever legalised putting mercury in fillings, because mercury is a neurotoxin. And as a neurotoxin, it can start to break down the cells lining. Do you know that mercury was banned in dentistry for 300 years? And in 1920, 2 dentists from Europe came over, started their own association and legalised mercury. I know in Australia, new dentists don't use it. They're taught that it's a neurotoxin, which it is. And also, as I showed you in the last lecture, when you've got high glucose in your body, it connects with protein molecules. The glucose connects with protein molecules and becomes sticky. But by the way, who's going to patch up the holes in the arteries, students? Your repairer and your rebuilder. So it patches up the holes, and the people don't realise that the mercury's damaging their tissues. They don't realise that the chemicals are poking holes. They don't realise that their mouldy house is killing them. So what's happening in the arteries? We're getting build-up, and then they're on a high carbohydrate diet, not realising that the wheat is as worse as the sugar. It's connecting with the protein molecules, making little sticky things. And there's one area here that's particularly narrow, and a sticky bit breaks off and blocks the artery. There's your stroke, there's your heart attack. Can you see it's not one thing, it's a whole lot of things, but can you also see that it's not cholesterol? To blame cholesterol for heart attacks is like blaming the fire trucks for the fire. Well, they must be causing the fire. They're always there. Have you noticed they're the one common denominator? They're just doing their job. They're just doing their job. I have a friend, his name's Dr. David Harris. He's a cranial sacral specialist in Australia. When he was 57, he went to the doctor. He's very fit. He's a cyclist. He's a vegetarian. His doctor was a bit concerned because his cardiologist is one of his friends. He said, "You're getting too breathless." So he tested his arteries. In one artery, he had 90% occlusion, and in other arteries, 85, another 85. His doctor booked him in the next week, and he had 5 bypasses. I talked to him next week. He said, "Barb, it's genetics." He said, "My father died of a heart attack at 52, but he said my father drank and smoked and did everything wrong." I said, David, genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. I said, go and watch my heart lecture. I talked to him a week later. He said, oh dear, I found the cause. He said, both my parents were chain smokers. There are 4,000 chemicals in a cigarette. So this little boy, he's breathing in this passive smoke, and already he's getting damage in his arterial walls as a child. And when you get scar tissue on those endothelium cells, it even weakens it a bit. So that's where it started. And he said in 2010, he wanted to put on muscle, so he started eating swordfish. Swordfish are the highest in mercury. You see, mercury is bioaccumulative, meaning the longer it's in your mouth, the more it's leaching into your system, and the bigger the fish, the bigger the amount of mercury. It's bioaccumulative. It accumulates. Swordfish is one of the worst. In fact, in Australia, pregnant women are told don't eat swordfish. He said within 6 months of eating swordfish every day, he started to get all the symptoms of multiple sclerosis. He stopped the fish. What caused his heart attack? It was the mercury, and it was also the damage already done. And people would look at him and say, look at him, he's a vegetarian. He's a cyclist. Must be genetics. Genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. David came and did our health program. He learned the things that you're learning tonight. He stopped the wheat. He started to have good fats in his diet, the olive oils. And he's off all his medication, because what they did was they put him on cholesterol-lowering medication. And what the cholesterol-lowering medication does is it blocks the pathway in the liver that the liver uses to make cholesterol. But that same pathway that the liver uses to make cholesterol, it uses to make coenzyme Q10. And what's coenzyme Q10? It's your heart protective enzyme. And David started to lose his memory. The side effect of cholesterol-lowering medication are Alzheimer's, dementia, memory loss, interested? Muscle wasting, and they've just added another one, breast cancer. You can stop your cholesterol-lowering medication immediately if you choose, but there will be a side effect. Your memory will return. That's the only side effect. So let's have a look at this. To reduce heart disease, number one, what have they done? They've told people to stop eating butter and start eating margarine. Now, they did this in about, was it the 80s? Surely that reduced heart disease, has it? No. And what's the definition of insanity? To do what you've always done, expect different results. Okay. Well, let's try again. Let's put half the nation over 50 on the statin drugs, the cholesterol-lowering medication. Surely that's reduced heart disease, has it? No. I've got a book that I recently got called Lipitor, Thief of Memory. Lipitor is one of your usual statin drugs, cholesterol-lowering medication. The author is a doctor and an astronaut. So he went for his yearly medical, and the doctor said, your cholesterol levels are getting a little bit high. I want you to go on Lipitor. 6 weeks later, his wife found him out in the garden, wandering around. She went out there. He didn't know who she was. He didn't know who he was. He didn't know where he was. She took him to the doctor, who gave him some fancy name, just have some neurological problem. In a lucid moment, he wondered if it was the statin drug, so he stopped it. 2 weeks later, his mind is totally clear. 1 year later, went to have his yearlies. Doctor said, no, still don't like your cholesterol levels. I want you to go on Lipitor. He said, no way, mate. He said, I nearly lost my mind last time. He said, oh, that's very rare. That's very rare. Well, we'll just put you on half dose. 6 weeks later, his wife found him out in the garden wandering around, doesn't know who he is, doesn't know who she is. So he stopped it immediately. And he put it up on a social website. And the people that contacted him and said, this is amazing, can we put it out there? He said, do it. Within hours, there were thousands of hits. The same thing happened to me. Is the 1,700 cases of Alzheimer's that are being diagnosed weekly in Australia something to do with this? And many people take the drug because of this. But God has said in 2 Timothy 1 verse 7, I have not given you the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. God wants us to weigh up the facts, yeah? Yes. And that's what I'm giving you tonight, the facts. So, what else have they done to lower heart disease? They've introduced fat phobia, is that right? We shouldn't be eating fat. Has that helped? No. Right, what else have we got? Something else, lower the levels. 2 years ago when I was in Living Springs, one of the guests was a nutritionist. She was 69. She said, I still work as a nutritionist. I work with a doctor and I also work in a hospital. She said, I've got the advantage of being trained in university 40 years ago. She said, 40 years ago, it was quite normal for someone to have a cholesterol level of 300 or under. She said they've changed the figures. What is it now? You have to be under 200. Or some blood things I was looking at, they said you have to be under 190. Oh, surely that has lowered heart disease, yeah? Has it? Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. A lady said to me, Barbara, I have to go on cholesterol-lowering medication. My cholesterol levels are dangerously high. I said, what are they? She said, 192. I said, that's perfectly normal. So if your cholesterol levels are 250, that's perfectly normal and you won't get Alzheimer's. What else have they done? I know. Let's put everyone on aspirin, yeah? To thin the blood. Aspirin causing brain bleeds. In fact, that is contributing to Alzheimer's. Eye bleeds. Everyone's having to get eyesight glasses. Stomach bleeds. Aspirin is the #1 cause of stomach ulcers. Yeah, but it's reducing heart disease, isn't it? Not at all. And what's the definition of insanity? To do what you've always done and expect different results. Now, I have quite a few books in my library. I'll give you the best. This is by a cardiovascular surgeon and it's called The Great Cholesterol Con. It's a lie and it's a con. It's not true. And his name's Dr. Malcolm Kendrick. It's a book worth reading. You need to get the facts. Now, the researcher that first put forth the theory that cholesterol and saturated fat cause heart disease is a man named Ansel Keys, and he put forth this theory in 1953. It takes a long time for the rubber to hit the road, so 60s, 70s, 80s it's starting to come out there. He studied 17 countries to prove his theory. He had to keep eliminating countries. He had to eliminate the Maasai. Oh, they got struck straight off the list. They live on blood, milk and meat. 0 heart disease. Oh, so they had to be thrown out. He had to get rid of the French. What do the French love? Why? Their creams, their cheeses, their butters. very little heart disease, they had to go. The Norwegians, the Swiss, they had to go. Is that true science? That's not true science. And the countries that he chose, he had to get rid of over half because they weren't doing what he wanted. The countries that he did choose, it's actually not the olive oil on the pasta, it's the pasta underneath the olive oil. In fact, it looks like it's the fat, but it's actually what the fat's eaten with is the problem. My son-in-law actually, when he went to Italy to have a look at all the architecture, because he's an architect, he cycled all around the little villages. So he ate in the little villages. He said, Mum, they don't eat pizza or pasta every day in Italy. They eat minestrone soup. And usually it's got a few bones in it, is that right? He said that's their normal fare. And yet we somehow think that they're eating it every day. As a cook, as a mother, it takes a lot of work. Whereas minestrone soup, just chuck it all in, put it on the corner of the stove, is that right? We've got better things to do. Family and friends come over, then you might cook something special. That might be the pizza and the pasta. So traditionally, they did not eat a high carbohydrate diet. And I had two girls who grew up in Greece, and they did our program. They said, we can't eat bread in Australia, but when we go back to Greece, we can eat that bread. I said, I'd like to suggest that in your little town, they're still growing the original wheat. Hasn't been hybridized. So how do we turn this around? But let me give you a few other books. These are some of the books I've got. The Great Cholesterol Deception by Dr. Another cardiovascular surgeon. The Great Cholesterol Hoax. The Great Cholesterol Myth by Johnny Bowden. We're running out of words. And then my two most recent, Put Your Heart in Your Mouth by Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride. All of them just totally blasting this ridiculous theory that cholesterol and saturated fat cause heart disease. And when you have a test to see what your cholesterol levels are, it's not telling you about this. It doesn't tell you the build-up, does it? It just tells you what's in your blood. And if you happen to be late for your appointment and you miss the bus and you finally get there and you sit down in the doctor's surgery a little stressed, your liver's probably made more cholesterol because your stress hormones are made from cholesterol and your cholesterol levels will be a bit high. And you take your blood pressure, what's that going to be? Through the roof. It changes. It changes. So let's make a list of how you can conquer heart disease. Number 1, eliminate caffeine. Did I hear some groans? Why eliminate caffeine? Well, when you see a tiger on the path, which is just what happens when you have a cup of coffee, it's the same as meeting a tiger on the path, it's a crisis. So blood pressure rises to increase blood supply to the extremities because you're about to do the run or the climb of your life because it's a crisis, right? So it gets the blood pressure up. Alcohol gets that blood pressure up. No safe dose of this one, it's a neurotoxin. Wheat. Get that wheat out. You don't want that high sugar. Get that refined sugar out. Because remember that high sugar, it connects with your protein molecules and you get these little sticky substances, and they're the ones that particularly can block those arteries. Number 2, a plant-based diet. A plant-based diet is high in antioxidant. A plant-based diet is high in protein. It's high in all the things that you need, and it'll clean those arteries out. Number 3, hydration. Water. You don't need aspirin, you don't need warfarin, rat poison. That's what it is. Causes the rats to bleed to death. All you need is to drink adequate water. I do a live blood analysis at my health retreat in Australia, and the only time I see blood sticking together is if the person hasn't drunk enough water. It's the best blood thinner that there is. And remember, just sip it over the day, little by little by little. Take to bed at night, sip it, sip it, sip it. And this one might surprise you, whole salt. Why does the doctor tell you to stop salt? Well, let me give you the salt story. Seawater has 92 minerals. And of those 92 minerals, 30% is made up of sodium and 50% is made up of chloride. So you can see that sodium chloride make up the most amount. So when the water's evaporated, the first crystals formed are sodium chloride. So they don't want to wait for the rest. They just scoop that up, bleach it white, put aluminium with it so it runs freely. There's your table salt. And if you were to inject that salt into the blood, you would kill the person. In fact, in the Bible it talks about salt. It's in Matthew chapter 5 verse 13. The Bible says, "Ye are the salt of the earth. If the salt has lost its savour," it's Old English, I'd like to suggest that table salt has lost its savour, because table salt only has 2 minerals. If the salt has lost its savour, wherewith shall it be salted? It is henceforth good for nothing but to be cast out and trodden under foot of men. Whoa, strong words. That's way back in the Bible. I'd like to suggest that this salt has lost its savour. What's the Bible says? Throw it out. It causes an imbalance in and out of the cell, which gets the blood pressure up. Let's walk over here to the CBD. The membrane around every cell in the body is a bilayered membrane. And when you put that crystal of whole salt, Celtic salt, on your tongue and drink water, it pulls the water inside the cell. You see, the whole salt has 3 magnesiums in it. So Celtic salt has 82 minerals, and of those 82 minerals there are 3 magnesium, and magnesium relaxes the heart at rest. Someone with high blood pressure needs that salt. It needs those 3 magnesiums. The highest concentration of minerals outside the cell is sodium. The highest concentration inside the cell is potassium. And you've got sodium-potassium pumps in that membrane around the cell that's constantly going like this, keeping the balance in and out of the cell. But if someone's on a high carbohydrate diet, and how many of these things have sodium chloride in them? Heaps of them. Even the cereal, along with the sugar. Because if they put salt in it, they can put more sugar in it. So the sodium levels are going up. The person's not eating enough fruit and vegetables, which is where all your potassium is, so potassium levels are dropping. Sodium levels inside the cell start rising. That causes the cell to swell. There's your high blood pressure. That's how sodium chloride causes high blood pressure. Whereas the whole salt, it'll balance the high blood pressure. If you're used to no salt, start slowly on the Celtic salt, just a little bit, and get your body used to it. So we need the whole salt. A crystal before every glass of water will cause those minerals to go inside the cell, CBD, just where we need them. A high carbohydrate diet causes high insulin. Then you get insulin resistance, and that insulin resistance can actually cause a swelling inside the cell, high blood pressure. A lot of people are scared of the sun because they're told it'll give them skin cancer. Do you know what the current figures are showing? This is 2012. It's showing that people that cover themselves with sunscreen will have a 50% greater risk of developing basal cell carcinoma and malignant melanomas. Because sunscreen blocks UVB rays, and your UVB rays are the protecting skin cancer rays. The best way to protect against skin cancer is to have short bursts of sunshine and build up your tan, and then you can have longer and longer periods. They're finding that people with low vitamin D, it's doubling their risk of skin cancer. You can overdo the sun and you can underdo the sun. And they found that when dark-skinned people go and live in England, it doubles their risk of heart disease because they're not getting enough vitamin D, because dark skin needs 10 times the sun of light skin. And they go to England, they're not getting enough sun, they're not getting enough vitamin D, and vitamin D is required to heal the damage in the arteries. So start getting out in that sun. Now's the time to have little bits so you got a nice tan for the summer. And you can't get a sun tan in a day, can you? Little by little by little. So number 5 is sun. Let me tell you something interesting about the sun. Usually when I come to America, the first 3 or 4 nights, I'm awake in the middle of the night. Because it's the other way around in Australia, yeah? And then I discovered if I put my face in full sun for half an hour a day, I close my eyes and I look at the sun. It gets a bit boring after about a minute, so I just put my head down and knit or sew or write or read. But my face is in full sun. I have slept every single night since I got here. Half an hour of face in the sun every day, because those sun's rays are giving clear messages to my brain. It's daytime. Let's have a look at blood thinners. Water and salt, excellent blood thinners. Cayenne pepper. Cayenne pepper thins blood. You'll get used to it. If you want to take it as a blood thinner, you start with 1/4 teaspoon in a little bit of water. Just throw it down. Before each meal is good. Tingles for a minute. Some people call it burning, I call it tingling. But that cayenne pepper will never burn you. It stimulates blood to the area. At our health retreat about 10 years ago, I got a call, a lady just had a heart attack. I ran down, I was there in a few minutes. She was lying down, she was 80, she'd already had a few that year. One man was holding a pulse, he said the pulse is nearly gone, so I said to the staff, quick, cayenne pepper. I grabbed it, got a spoonful, I don't even know how much I got, and just put it in her mouth. She was half conscious, we gave her a bit of water. In 2 minutes, the guy holding a pulse, he said, the pulse is strong. All the colour came to her face because she was white. She sat up and said, what happened? Everyone in the room, there were about 14 people, it was a cooking class, they were just going, whoa, they couldn't believe their eyes. I said, it's not me, it's the cayenne pepper. We sold out of cayenne pepper that program. What did the cayenne pepper do? What the cayenne pepper did was it immediately thinned the blood. It takes 1 minute for 1 drop of blood to go around your whole body. It thinned the blood, it opened the capillaries. So she got a powerful delivery of blood through to the heart. I'd read about it, but I saw it with my own eyes. So it's very impressive stuff. In fact, it's almost a first aid kit in one, is that cayenne pepper. When you buy it, please buy it from the health food shop, because in a lot of supermarkets, it says cayenne pepper, but it can be chili, and that's a totally different thing. Chili comes from the chili plant. Cayenne pepper from the capsicum plant. It should be bright, bright orange. When it's brown, it's a little bit old. So cayenne pepper, also ginger, and you can have ginger, just grate up ginger, pour boiling water on it, one of my favourite teas. Also garlic, just include these in your daily food. Omega-3. Omega-3 thins the blood, and omega-3 is found in walnuts, it's found in your chia seeds, and it's found in your flax seeds. So just grind up your flax seeds and put it on your breakfast every morning, and you can soak chia in a little water and pour that on your breakfast. And there is a herb that particularly strengthens the heart. It's called the hawthorn berry. The hawthorn berry strengthens the heart. One of the main causes of heart arrhythmia is wheat and caffeine. They both cause heart arrhythmia because most people are allergic to these two, and when you take something into your body's allergic to, your heart starts moving. The hawthorn berry strengthens the heart. Psalm 104 verse 14, the Bible says, God gave herbs for the service of man. If your blood pressure's high, it can bring it down. If it's low, it can bring it up. In fact, you can even take up to, in a crisis, even 6,000 milligrams a day. That's a lot. Most people, I suggest, take 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams a day. You can get it in tablet form. Let me give you the story of Henry. Henry was a retired judge and he came to our retreat. He was on medication for high blood pressure, for cholesterol, for blood thinning, for also diabetes. He was on medication for gout, and he was on medication for stomach ulcers. So he's on 6 medications. He's just retired from the bench. He's 66. He was a little overweight. Maybe he was about 100 pound overweight. I said, are you interested in coming off your medication? He said, no, thank you very much. I'm very happy with my medication. I respect everyone's choice. But I put him on the hawthorn berries, and I put him on the good salt. When he went home, he said, I'll take some berries with me, because you can buy the dried berries and make them as a tea. 4 months later, I got a call from Henry. He said, Barbara, I would like to visit you. I want more hawthorn berries. I said, come for lunch, Henry. When I opened the door, I didn't recognize Henry. So in 4 months, he lost 20 kilos, which is 40 pounds. I said, looking good, Henry? He said, yes, I can do my coat jacket up now. All the puffiness had gone out of his face. He said, sit down, I have a few stories for you. So when I sat down, he said, I went to my doctor recently to have my blood pressure taken, and the doctor went to walk out of the room, and Henry said, what are you doing? He said, the machine's broken. Henry said, why do you say that? He said, your blood pressure is 170 on 90. Now, that's on medication. He said, this machine says your blood pressure is 120 on 80. It's broken. Henry said, that's my blood pressure now. He said, the doctor has taken me off all my medication because if he doesn't, his blood pressure will go too low and his blood sugar will go too low. Everything would go too low. And by the way, if your cholesterol levels go under 100, your brain starts to suffer. You can get depressed, even suicidal, because your brain needs that cholesterol. So some would say, what's a good cholesterol reading? Oh, between 200, 300. You won't get Alzheimer's. He said to me, I'm off all my medication. What did Henry do? He proved to his doctor that he could do it. I said, tell me what you're eating, Henry. He said, I have a big spaghetti bowl of low glycemic fruits for breakfast, whole grain cereal, maybe it's millet or quinoa, coconut cream, did you hear that? 40-pound lost on coconut cream, because fat doesn't make you fat. I have chia and flaxseed over it. And then I have a slice of sourdough spelt toast with avocado and tomato, or sometimes an organic egg, or sometimes some black-eyed beans or peas. Now that's not a light diet, is it? He said, I don't eat again till lunch. At lunch I have a big salad, I have some baked or steamed or stir-fried veggies, and then I have protein. I have maybe lima beans or some sort of protein, and I might have another slice of sourdough toast with avocado and tomato. And he said, and I do not eat again till breakfast. You don't have to when you eat like that. So that's 40-pound lost in 4 months. I said, impressive, Henry. He said, and I'll walk. I said, tell me about your exercise program. He said, I find I can walk another block every week. I said, I love your story, Henry. He emailed, well, he didn't email me. He's from the old school. He wrote me a letter. Remember those things, letters in the mail? About a year later, he said, I wanted to contact you because it is now 75-pound loss. How simple is that? And that's all he did. Now that his blood pressure's normal, he doesn't have to take the hawthorn berry anymore. You see that? And I think at first he took magnesium supplements, but now not even that. I like Henry's story because he didn't stop his medication, he implemented the lifestyle, he implemented the dietary changes. And as his body changed, his doctor took him off his meds. Can you see how these two lectures are very similar? Very similar. The same things are from the all. Now I have a few questions here. Have you heard of the ketogenic diet, and what do you think about it? As you can see by what I've shown you, I'm advocating a low carbohydrate diet, advocating that you have high protein, and the high protein, or generous protein, being the legumes, nuts and seeds, and including a good fat in your diet. That's basically almost the ketogenic diet. Most ketogenic diet is meat and dairy. Is there anything wrong with meat and dairy? The problem today is that it's very hard to find a healthy cow. And also, the book China Study shows this doctor could turn cancer on and off by the amount of meat and dairy products that he was giving the rats, because meat gives off a high sulfur waste which is very acidic in the body. So a superior diet is your vegetarian ketogenic diet. And Dr. Bruce Fife talks about it in the book Stop Alzheimer's Now, Stop Autism Now. And he says supplement with a teaspoon of coconut oil 3 times a day and build up to 4 teaspoons of coconut oil 3 times a day. That's in the book Stop Autism Now and Stop Alzheimer's Now, showing how you can heal neurological diseases with this coconut oil. Because those ketones are neurohealers, neuroprotectives. So I'm all for the ketogenic diet, but the vegetarian version. Can I eventually get off my blood pressure medication? I don't see why not. I've seen many people get off their blood pressure medication. Are oats okay? For some people they are, for some people they aren't. Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride in her book Stop Autism Now, no, what's hers? Put Your Heart in Your Mouth. She says the 3 hardest grains to digest are wheat, oats and barley. So if you do like oats, have them maybe just 3 times a week. But another porridge that is just as delicious, it is gluten-free and a bit easy to digest, is millet. Also, but it needs almost 3.5 cups of water to 1 cup of millet to make it like a porridge. It's good in the crock pot overnight. How do you lose weight? I think I've shown you that. Is that right? Low carbohydrate helps to lose weight. Sweet potatoes, golden red, fantastic. Because sweet potatoes are lower on the glycemic index. Explain rebounding. Can you get the same effect from climbing? Climbing over. What the rebounder does is there is no jarring on a rebounder, and they have found that rebounding is the most effective exercise there is. NASA found it's the only exercise that prevented their astronauts losing so much muscle and bone loss when they went to outer space with no gravity, because the rebounder constantly defies gravity.
It's a trampoline.
It's a trampoline, a mini trampoline. One lady said, can't we just have a trampoline? You'll find that if it's way out there, you won't go there, but if it's in your lounge room, you will. And rain, hail or shine, you can use it. You mentioned neuropathy. Is it just a diet change required to overcome it? That will help a lot because that'll stop the cause. Sometimes people get neuropathy from side effect from chemotherapy. If you go to my lecture on YouTube on poultices, you will find that cayenne pepper compresses on the bottom of the feet 3 times a week will get the blood supply down there and will feed the nerves, and feeling will come back in the feet. How do you gain muscle on a plant-based diet? How you gain muscle is protein. So you've got to have protein every meal. So this is your legumes, nuts and seeds. Google vegetarian, vegan athletes and you'll find some impressive stories. But you've got to have adequate protein. I have legumes every meal. Some people say legumes every meal. You wouldn't blink at bread every meal. You wouldn't blink at meat every meal. It's just you're not used to it. What about sprouted wheat, Ezekiel bread? I find Ezekiel bread very heavy bread, and I prefer not to eat a very heavy bread. But the wheat is still a hybridized wheat. But because it's sprouted, it does break down the gluten in the grain, and it does make the starch a little bit better. Is everything unhealthy? Oh, I read it wrong, sorry. I tend to speed read. Sorry, I'll do it properly now. Is erythritol unhealthy? Can you see why I thought it was said everything? I don't know what it is. Sorry, I don't know what erythritol is.
Is it a sweetener? It's a sweetener.
Oh, it's a sweetener. Maybe it's like aspartame, saccharin. Some people say, what's worse, these chemical sweeteners or sugar? I say, how do you want to die? They're both dangerous, and these chemical sweeteners can damage the arterial walls, increasing heart disease, but they also interfere with the neurotransmitters in the brain, so we don't want them. Osteoarthritis. For the person with osteoarthritis, I suggest watching my hormone lecture and watching my acid alkaline lecture, and they show how you can conquer that. What are your thoughts on healing prostate cancer? There is a herb that's specific for the prostate. It's called saw pimento. But also, men need zinc, because what zinc does, it inhibits the conversion of testosterone to the type of testosterone that causes inflammation of the prostate gland. In fact, if every man was on a zinc supplement, no man would get prostate cancer. So I guess they'll be sold out tomorrow, is that right? But also for prostate cancer, not only is zinc necessary and the herb saw pimento, but also balancing the hormones. So if you go to my hormone lecture, it'll show you there. How do different sugars compare with coconut palm. So coconut, sorry, they're a bit of a messy writer. Coconut sugar and palm sugar are good sugars because they're just the crystallised nectar from the palm flower. But if someone's a diabetic, they still need to be even careful of that. My 6-year-old son has congenital hypothyroidism. What suggestions could you offer? Plant-based diet and exercise? Is there something missing? Well, that's a big subject which really can't be answered. But I found no matter what the problem, the plant-based diet does improve things. Better gallbladder health without pain. The gallbladder responds very well on this diet, responds very well also to the healthy fats. But there are herbs that are specific for the liver, gallbladder, and that is your dandelion, St. Mary's thistle, those bitter herbs, but also lemon. Lemon is an excellent liver and gallbladder. Or compress on the gallbladder, that certainly can ease it. And you'll find that in my poultice lecture. Best way to lower high LDL cholesterol levels. Why do you want to do that? We need it. It's repairing our arteries. Help enlarge prostate, we just covered that one. How would you treat an autoimmune disease? With a plant-based diet? We'd have to investigate to find out what has caused such a thing. Mold can cause it. Many things can. Do you have any... Sorry, it's such tiny writing I can't quite write it. This one. For myasthenia gravis. Sorry, that's a little bit of a hard one to read. Turmeric. Is it good for joint pain? Yes. In fact, turmeric is one of the best anti-inflammatories there is, and you can take up to 6,000 milligrams a day of turmeric if there's joint pain. But at the same time, look at the acid alkaline lecture to see how you can go more alkaline foods, and also grated ginger poultices on the joint can get the inflammation down, and that is in my poultice lecture. So my time is up. One.
We'd ask if there was an email address that we...
If you go to if you put in Barbara O'Neil into YouTube, you'll find all the information in there. You'll find it'll go to Misty Mountain Health Retreat, and you'll find the email there. Okay. Yes.
I'm wondering about they put me on aspirin about 3 years now. Would you suggest I get on the pepper?
That's right. Because remember what that aspirin's doing? Causing brain bleeds, eye bleeds, stomach bleeds. We don't want that.
When I blow my nose, it be a little...
Yes.
I mean, you told me so.
That's right. That's right. You're seeing it. So you can stop that immediately and start having a little cayenne pepper. And you'll get used to it. Yeah?
Himalayan pig salt.
Pardon? Himalayan pig salt has 75 minerals. It's almost as good as it's certainly a lot better than the table salt. So if you've got Himalayan salt, use it, but if you can get Celtic, it's even better. Yeah?
I was told 3 weeks ago today that I've got type 2 diabetes. And I went to Walmart, got one of those glucose detectors. What should it be? It comes with a range from 70 to 180, and he wants me to have it between 70 and 160. You said a while ago a reading.
Oh no, that's fine. That's fine.
What's a good average?
A good average is around 100. Yeah, so 180, still don't be worried about that. Go down to 70, don't want to go under 70. But the range he gave you is correct.
So we want to thank Miss Barbara O'Neil for coming out. So, as we hear these new and exciting but it can be scary. You're talking about changing diets, different things. But I want to let you know we have some resources, some support that we offer. Number one, we have cooking schools. So we do cooking schools at the restaurant right here. The Vineyard Cafe is literally right there. We do it the third Monday of every month. And we also do a cooking school in Ringgold at the Battlefield Community Seventh-day Adventist Church the third Tuesday of every month. So we go over these principles and we go and we make it real and we create tasty dishes that you can add to your diet. Also, we do a 10-day health challenge. I saw the Hancocks are here. They were in our first 10-day challenge 3 years ago. And now we're over about 300 people that we work with over the last 3 years, helping people to guide them through this process. Because it can be scary. You're talking about different groceries, you're shopping differently, you're cooking differently, and it's a big shock. So we're here to help you. On that table in the back, the Vineyard Cafe, if you're interested in doing a health consultation or interested in our 10-day challenge, there's a form to fill out. Also, I wanted to tell this story. You guys are hearing great information.
Amen.
And you want to make changes, but sometimes we say, you know what, maybe next week, right? Or maybe the following week. So we had a guy, and we were doing a 10-day challenge, this was this last month, and we were going to start a program. And he was expected to be there. And I was waiting, and I'm like, I'm saying, we're going to start the meeting. So as I'm doing my presentation, I send a text out. And the daughter sends me a text back and says, my dad just had a massive heart attack. And now all of a sudden being healthy became really real to that family. So we always say prevention is better than cure. We want to make sure that we prevent these things from happening. And if anybody knows us in the restaurant, we're very passionate about health because people are dying left and right from diseases that we don't need to be suffering with. So we want to get this information out. That's why we say this lecture was free. And the Bible says, freely you have received, freely give. So as you learn these things, you share it with your family. There's a book called Blue Zones by Dan Buechner, I think his name is. And it's National Geographic. Went around the whole world looking for people who lived over 100 years old. And these principles that Barbara went over, these guys are living over 100 years old. So we need to recapture these years that we're losing. So with that, I know that book Blue Zones, I say, you know what, I want to make Summerville Blue Zones. We came here 3 years ago, we want to make Summerville and Northwest Georgia a Blue Zone. And how does that happen? You guys. You learn, you share. You learn, you share. And by God's grace, we can change this community. We've seen a lot of changes, but we want to see more because we don't want to see people dying. So with that, who has learned something? Who is going to share? I love that commitment. So with that, I want to have a word of prayer and then we'll get dismissed. If you bow your heads with me. Father in heaven, we thank you, Lord, for just being here. Getting Barbara O'Neil over here to share these information out to these people here in this community. And we pray, Lord, as we leave this place, that we can take these things and this excitement that we have and share with our family and apply these things to our lives, that we too can experience a healthy lifestyle and we can share it with our families. Please be with Barbara as she travels back to Alabama and as all the way back to Australia. And be with us here at Summerville as well. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen.